Thank you so much for coming to my session. Before I get started, I really want to acknowledge the Yugambeh people on whose land that we are sharing with today, and just acknowledge that the land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. My study is actually titled We Make Art and It Makes Us, an artographic exploration of generalist primary teachers' creative self-beliefs. So I submitted my PhD last Monday. It's been a wonderful journey, and I want to thank my wonderful principal supervisor who is here today for getting me here 5 years on. So today, what I want to when I was thinking about what to prepare, I was like, oh, there's so much, and how do I fit it all into 15 minutes? But I'm sharing with you a few of the highlights of my findings. So my questions that I asked for my thesis are that how does time spent making art cultivate an understanding of creativity and creative self-beliefs? What are the particular pedagogies that enable creative self-beliefs? And what is the impact of teachers' own art making on their classroom practices? And as you can probably tell as we go through my presentation, I love colour, I love all things visual, and making art is how I understand the world. So I engaged a methodology that I have come to understand more of, and I have grown to love over the last 5 years. I have lived this, well, I've probably lived this way of being my entire life. But it has put a name to how I live. So artography is an arts-based educational research methodology, and it really privileges the identities of an artist, teacher, and researcher, as you can see in the name itself with the forward slashes, the A, the R, and the T. But artography is way more than just that. It is about inquiring into the world through those lenses and living that inquiry as we think and create and be together in community. Artography is also really interested in the blending of art, whether that's, for me, that's visual, but whether that's all sorts of the arts, dance, drama, all creative ways of being in the world, and writing. And so you'll notice today that I am trying to clearly present ideas through not just words, not just text, but through visuals as well. And that really speaks to something that is really important to me, is that a lot of people, particularly I'm interested in generalist primary teachers, have often sort of said, oh, I can't do it, I'm not creative, I don't have a creative bone in my body. And my positioning on that is that that's bullshit. Everyone is creative, and they need to have experiences where they can practice that creativity and grow in understanding what is already inside themselves. So as I went about my study, I worked with, I don't call them participants, I worked with a series of co-inquirers who were generalist primary teachers from around this region. And we worked together over a period of a couple of weeks to explore how art making can help us understand what creativity is. And I do acknowledge that creativity is not just the domain of the arts, but it is our primary practice, and it's what we do as artists, is be creative. So it's a perfect situation to explore creativity. So this is some of the images that I've drawn of my co-inquirers as they walked this path with me. And what we did, we met for 6 weeks, and I developed a curriculum to help scaffold the learning for the primary teachers who were selected specifically because they self-identified that they lacked confidence in visual practices and in creativity. And so I developed a series of workshops, as you can see here. Our first workshop, we met each other, and there was specific techniques that I used to help get them comfortable in their art making. And one of those was collaborative foot painting, which is a real equaler. And gosh, if I had time, we'd be rolling out a canvas right here, and all of us would be taking off our shoes. Then we moved on and we did printmaking, we did continuous blind contour drawings. But what we were doing was we were creating our visual journals sort of step by step together to really, while we were building our visual journals, we were building our creative confidence and our creative praxis. I am rushing here a little because I want to get to some videos that I've made for you. There was heaps of data generated. I recorded conversations, I worked in my visual journals, lots of photos from the workshops themselves and for students. In the classrooms of the co-inquirers, I saw so much beautiful artwork, art making. And the co-inquirers also created a visual journal each during this time. From that, more data was generated, lots of data was generated. I created a series of videos. I have a series throughout my thesis. It's not that many words, but it's predominantly images with a series of comic strips to help communicate in a way that was really broke down the barriers of academic writing. I mean, I love academic writing, but boy, do I find it hard to understand sometimes. And my goal was to take these really complicated, well, sometimes exhausting things to read and to make them accessible. And so that's some of the things that, and I worked on a series of little flip books to really share the visual journaling that was so much of a part of my research. So I have a series of a few different videos to show with you. And I did these videos because art making is such a tactile thing. And I really want to try and communicate some of that embodied sense by showing you this video.
It's hard, even in this visual moving format, to communicate the visceral nature of the visual journals. What's missing here is the feel of these pages, the thick chunkiness of the visual journal as the pages get turned and the spine starts to creak, as it becomes overloaded with the weight of the paint and the primer and the colours and the collage that I've used. What you can see here is that I've actually cut and taped the pages back together and inserted a series of zines that I've created, not just on my own, but with a series of groups as we created through the COVID period online together, making our thinking visible through the materiality of art making. I'm trying to give a sense of the material nature of the visual journals through these videos, to see the interactive way that they have become part of who I am as they have grown and expanded and exploded out beyond the page itself. They've become a living embodiment of my inquiry.
Skip forward. Okay, so one of the major findings of my research is that I've got here that artographic communitas creates a fertile atmosphere to develop practical creativity. Now I'll just unpack that there. One of the things that communitas is a word that's used in the literature to describe what happens in a group of people where something becomes special. There's something, and I think all of us can really understand this concept after spending a lot of time apart over the last few years. When we're together in a room, particularly when we're making art, something happens that sort of fizzes in the environment. There's a connection that you can't necessarily experience on your own if you were home making art on your own. So the thing that I really found was that making art together is so important and productive in terms of raising our sense of our creative selves. We feel so empowered when we're making and we're making with other people that it's so supportive to who we are as creative beings. And so that's one of the strongest recommendations that I can make, is that making in community is so important. And it's often it's certainly what happens in a classroom. Students get to make together, but teachers need opportunities to make art together, particularly if they are required to teach the visual arts to students. And this concept of practical creativity being that we need to do it. We can't just be expected as teachers, particularly generalist teachers who are expected to be across the entirety of the curriculum. We need to experience what it means to make art if we're required to teach art in the classroom. So one of the strongest findings from my study is that teachers, initial teacher education and professional development, teachers need to make art themselves to really understand what it is that they're requiring students to do. And it's certainly really great for you as well. So it's a wonderful thing to do, to make art together in a group. So this is one of the conversations that was had during our time together, where the co-inquirers were reflecting on what it means to be creative together as a group. I'll just give you a minute to have a look at this. I asked the co-inquirers at the end of our time together to just reflect on what had changed in their understanding of what creativity was. Sorry, I know you're not super readers there, but we'll just move on to this story here. So this is a story of Emma who had some really wonderful art making during our time together.
Emma had very strong opinions about what creativity was and how it functions. So creativity is about solving problems, but it's not just about the visual arts. Everything comes into it. Writing maths, STEM, STEAM, all of those things. And even though Emma seemed quite confident with the idea of teaching art, she really highlighted the fact that school is so busy these days with the high demands in the curriculum to cover everything. She said, at the moment, we're specialising very quickly in all our subject areas as primary teachers. When is bust? When do we stop? We are teaching 8, 9 specific subjects. And how can you be an expert in everything and do a good job of it? And with the arts, you've got an hour a week. That's all you've got. Emma threw herself into our art making. She was often the first to arrive and the last to leave. The art making for Emma did not stay contained to the workshops like the rest of the co-inquirers. It bled into her everyday life as well, as she shared with me that her children were getting sick of the kitchen table being filled with art supplies instead of dinner. Emma shared the following thoughts as we washed up our paintbrushes together one evening. I always thought creativity was just problem solving, But after doing all these workshops, I've realised that it's so much more than that. It's playfulness and experimentation. It's not about what you end up with at the end, but it's the feeling you get inside. It's invigorating. I used to think I couldn't draw, but look at what I've done. It's amazing what happens when you take the time to give it a go. Now I can't stop. This passion for art making also impacted her teaching. Emma started printing with her students, and this art making eventually was displayed at a local fair.
I believe I've run out of time, so I'll just click across one more time. We'll see what we've got. Well, I might just leave this up here. We learnt so much from our time of making art together, and I'll leave it with that. We'll pass over to questions. We've got a few minutes. Any questions? Shay. Research teachers now give the benefit of the view from the program. It's certainly something that I will be exploring moving forward. I hope so. Yeah, no, I think that there's such a need, and the fact that I mean, teachers are really busy people, and I accepted 25 people at first, and of course we met over 6 weeks for 3 hours once a week, and I had 12 people who stayed with me that whole time, which is a huge commitment from teachers working all day and then coming for 3 hours of an evening, and they enjoyed the time so much that they begged me to run a 7th workshop, which we met all day on Saturday. So the need is out there, so I think that's definitely something in the future. Anyone else? Teresa.
Congratulations, and I think you're going to school, you have made and you will be making a huge, unique step in the world in terms of,
Oh, thank you.
I know you live up here though, Kate. I've got a really sweet school at Karingi from my side. And I just want they would adore you there, all those teachers, and that you can start from there.
We'll see how we go. Lex.
My question is, what are you going to do next?
Well, I don't really know. I have lots of things that I want to do next. I am teaching into the creative arts here with all of the initial teacher program. I've got a bunch of 600 first years, so I'm really excited that my work has really landed specifically in my area of research. So that's one thing. But I am really interested I'm really interested between the connection between art making and well-being. So that's possibly something I'll be looking into further. It was not what I was asking, but it's pretty much most of what my co-inquirers talked about is not just how it made them understand their creativity better, but just how much better it made them feel to do it. And as teachers are a bunch of really burnt out people at the moment, I think that art making has space to really assist in that area.
Well, we might call it quits on that one. So look, thanks again, Katie, and all the best with that thesis.